August, the moon seesaw. One afternoon in August, the forest friends decided to search for shooting stars in the sky. "Let's go up to the top of the hill. We're sure to see them from there," said Dolly. "And we can visit the moon beetle," Flutter added. The moon beetle was sitting in front of his house, enjoying the summer sunshine. He was delighted to see his friends, and he invited them inside. "Oh, I'm so happy you came. What brought you to these parts?" he asked. "We'd like to search for shooting stars with you," Berry explained. "Super! I'll make some lemonade." "Let's make a seesaw while we're waiting," said Stanley. "Good idea," Balthazar agreed. They found some long planks at the bottom of the garden. They sawed and hammered, and the seesaw was soon complete. But when Stanley sat on it, the wood made a loud noise and broke in two. "The plank was too weak. We need to strengthen it," the bee-boy complained. So they set to work once more, and the seesaw was ready in no time. But when Flutter and Dolly sat on it, it didn't see or saw. "Ah, we made the screws too tight," the stag beetle grumbled. So they set to work once more. But when they were done, the bit in the middle snapped clean in half. "We'll never get it right, and it's getting late for building things," Balthazar announced. "I've got one last idea," the moon beetle said with a secretive smile. "Oh, moon, please come down here to us." And the moon came down until it reached the top of the hill. Then the moon beetle rolled over to the moon and whispered in its ear. The moon grinned and simply said, "Okay." "The seesaw's here. You can sit on it. But hurry, because the moon can't stay for long," the moon beetle instructed. "We can't leave you out," said Flutter. And they laughed and played until a sparkling star house landed on the ground nearby. And who should step out of the door but the silent star girl?
"Oh, Star Girl," said the moon, "you must have been surprised when I suddenly vanished from the sky. But I was just helping out these friends with a seesaw ride."
"Star Girl, it's super to see you. Come and watch the shooting stars with us too," the butterfly girl cried, and she hugged her old friend.
"It's time for me to say goodbye, because I have to go back to the night sky," the moon told them, and it started to rise upwards.
They did not have to wait long before they saw their first shooting star. After that, there were so many stars shooting around that it was hard to keep count. When the last ball of light had flashed across the sky, the star girl stepped back into her house and flew up into the sky. Then the little friends all set off home. The moon beetle snuggled up in bed and soon fell fast asleep, and the night was filled with the gentle tinkle of pretty flowers.
Little kids and big kids. There were 2 football pitches next to the kindergarten. The little kids played next to the pine tree. Bubble the baby beetle was the captain, the little bark beetle was goalie, and the ant boys made up the rest of the team. The big kids played in the shade of the oak tree. Stanley the stag beetle, Balthazar the bumblebee, Eddie the potato beetle and Berry the snail boy. The little kids played with a spotty rubber ball. The big kids had a proper football. One autumn day, Balthazar picked up the little kid's ball and he started to do tricks with it.
Look at this,
He teased.
give it back, it's ours.
Bubble whined.
I only want to show you how high I can kick it.
Boasted Balthazar, and he gave the rubber ball a mighty kick. He kicked it so hard that the ball burst. Now there's only one ball left. The little kids can have it in the morning and the big kids can play with it in the afternoon, the kindergarten teacher decreed. The big kids kept taking the ball from the little kids. And the little kids would steal it from the big kids. They were constantly quarrelling. Why don't you play together? Dolly asked the boys. Together? Never. The little kids are weedy and clumsy, yelled Stanley the stag beetle.
And the big kids are horrid and pushy.
The little ant boy shouted back.
Stop being so silly. Play a match instead. Little kids versus big kids.
How can 4 little kids win against 4 big kids?
The bark beetle complained. All right then. Leapy and I will join in with the little kids. Then there'll be 6 of us against 4 big kids. How about that? The ladybird girl asked. Super! They all agreed. They started to play. They had so much fun that they hardly noticed the time fly by. In the end, thanks to a tricky goal from Bubble, the little kids won the match 5-4.
Same again tomorrow.
Balthazar said to Bubble the baby beetle.
We can play a rematch.
The next day they played the rematch. This time the big kids beat Bubbles' team 4-3. The little kids aren't so clumsy after all, Stanley grumbled, and the 2 captains shook hands. A new boy came to kindergarten the day after that. The little flea brought his own stripy ball and he let the little kids play with it. This meant that Bubbles' team went back to the pine tree and the big kids stayed on the larger pitch. They sometimes played together after that, but they did not count the goals. The Star House. One summer evening, Berry and Dolly were sitting playing cards in Dolly's house when they spotted a bright light over the hill. What was that? Berry asked. It looked like a shooting star. A shooting star? Let's go and take a closer look, Dolly suggested. Berry and Dolly held hands and walked in the direction of the strange light. Look over there, Berry. The little snail boy's mouth fell open in surprise. Right on the top of the hill stood a house the shape of a star.
Where did that come from? It wasn't there the other day,
Berry whispered.
You stay here and I'll run and tell the others,
Dolly whispered back, and she flew off to tell Balthazar, Flutter and Stanley. When they were all together, the group of friends crept slowly towards a peculiar house. Stanley knocked on the front door. A shy girl popped her head around the door. She had long hair that sparkled with tiny stars and golden wings that glistened in the darkness. Berry was the first to speak. "Who are you and how did you get here?" But the girl didn't say a word.
Can we help you?
No answer again. The girl just stood there and said nothing.
All right then, if you're not going to speak, then don't. Come on, let's go home.
Wait a minute, Dolly said. Perhaps she can't speak.
She can't speak? The others asked back in amazement. Dolly picked up a stick and scripted a star on the ground. Then she handed the stick to the girl. The little girl reached for the stick and started to draw.
A little harp?
Dolly asked, and the little girl nodded.
You've lost it?
Flutter asked, and the little girl pointed to the window.
It fell out of the window?
The little girl nodded again.
I don't understand,
Balthazar grumbled.
I understand,
Dolly said.
She lives up in the sky, but she dropped her harp out of the window and she's come down here to look for it.
Then let's help her,
Balthazar suggested. Don't worry, we'll find it, they all told her, and they hurried off into the forest to search for her missing instrument. I can't find it, Berry said with a sorry sigh. I've looked in all the bushes.
I can't find it either, and I've looked absolutely everywhere,
Balthazar added.
I'm going to take a look higher up,
Flutter told them, and she flapped up into the trees.
Here it is! Here it is! I found it!
The little butterfly girl soon shouted. Flutter lifted a little golden harp out of the canary's nest. She carefully handed the harp back to the star girl. The little girl flew back into the house and closed the door. She lifted a sparkling star out of her hair and gave it to Flutter.
Is that for me?
The little butterfly girl asked in surprise, and the star girl nodded. Then she sat in the window and started to play her harp. And as she played, the star house began to lift higher and higher.
She's flying up into the sky,
Dolly said with her eyes wide in wonderment. Soon it looked as tiny as all the other twinkling stars in the night sky.
It's a shame that she had to go,
Stanley sighed. Flutter took very good care of her twinkling star. She kept it in a little box and only wore it in her hair on very special days. It always reminded her of the little girl playing the harp in her star house, high up in the sky. Gingerbread. December had arrived, and the forest was covered in a thick quilt of snow. Berry and Dolly were sitting chatting in the ladybird's dotty house.
Let's bake some gingerbread biscuits,
Dolly suggested with a bright smile. Berry and Dolly got to work in the kitchen. They bustled around in a cloud of spices and flour and rolled the biscuit dough out flat on the table. Dolly got all the gingerbread cutters out of the drawer. They cut lots of different shapes out and popped the biscuits in the oven to bake. When the biscuits were cooked to a crunchy crisp, Dolly took them out of the oven and put them in a pretty bowl. Then she carefully placed the bowl outside in the snow.
These hot biscuits will soon cool down in the winter chill,
she told Berry. Just then a magpie flew over the house. He could smell the delicious gingerbread biscuits, and he swooped down and carried the lot off in his big beak. When Dolly came out later, The bowl and biscuits had completely disappeared. "Oh dear, someone's taken my yummy biscuits," she shrieked. "But who could have taken the bowl?" Berry asked. Berry and Dolly decided to go and search in the forest. The first friend they ran into was Iris the ice beetle. "Oh, Iris, someone has taken my yellow bowl full of fresh gingerbread biscuits. You didn't see who it was, did you?" Dolly asked. "Yes, I did. It was the magpie. He flew off in that direction." They kept walking until they met the grub. "Hello, grub. The magpie took my yellow bowl filled with gingerbread biscuits. Did you see which way he flew?" The grub pointed. Not long after, Berry and Dolly caught sight of Bubble and Eddie, who were building a snowman. "Have you seen the magpie? He took my yellow bowl and all our gingerbread," Dolly complained. "Yes, we saw him. He flew towards the stream," the potato beetle replied. "Look, Dolly, fresh biscuit crumbs. The magpie must have flown this way," Berry suddenly shouted. "If we follow the trail, it should take us to the magpie's nest," Dolly proposed. The pair of them followed the trail of crumbs, and it took them all the way to the magpie's nest and to the sweet smell of gingerbread. Berry and Dolly climbed up the tree and knocked on the magpie's door. "Did you take my yellow bowl filled with fresh gingerbread?" Dolly asked as soon as the magpie opened the door. "Yes, it was me. I was very hungry. I saw the bowl sitting there, so I took it, but I can give it back to you." "It's not nice to take what belongs to somebody else," Dolly said, and marched back to her house in a grumpy mood. Berry did his best to keep up with the little ladybird. "Don't be angry, Dolly. I know that the magpie took your bowl, but he gave it back, and I'm certain that he'll apologise," the little snail said. Berry and Dolly invited their friends over that afternoon. Flutter the butterfly, Balthazar the bee, and Stanley the stag beetle all came around for tea. They all sat at the table and began to eat. It wasn't long after that they heard a soft knock on the front door. Dolly opened the door. The magpie was standing outside and looking very ashamed of himself. "I brought you some rosehip cordial. I made it myself. Please take it as a gift to say how sorry I am for pinching your gingerbread," the magpie said. "Why don't you come in and join us for a bite to eat, magpie? There's plenty of room for you at our table." This made the magpie very happy. The friends sat around the table, munching on delicious gingerbread biscuits and sipping fresh rosehip cordial. They chatted and laughed late into the night. Sea Adventure. One summer day, Berry the snail and Dolly the ladybird found a colourful storybook. It was packed with pretty pictures of the sea swimming with fishes and crabs. And there was another strange animal that Berry had never seen. "It's called an octopus, but I've never seen a real one either." "Why don't we go to the sea?" Berry asked excitedly. "But we don't know where the sea is, Berry." "I know, let's ask Dr. Owl. He knows everything." "Do you know how to get to the sea, Dr. Owl?"
"You'll need to build a boat and sail down the stream. The stream will take you to the river, and the river flows right into the sea."
Berry and Dolly thanked Dr. Owl for his advice and got to work right away. The 3 owl chicks happily helped them build their boat. The 2 friends jumped in, and the stream carried them all the way to the sea. "Hooray! We're going to see the sea!" The wind blew their boat down the stream and then the river. It wasn't long before the vast blue sea was right in front of them. "We're here!" yelled Berry. He pulled the boat to the shore and tied it to a palm tree. "Come on, Dolly. let's dive to the bottom of the sea. The two friends saw all kinds of incredible creatures under the sea. They spotted a big crab and followed it to the surface.
Excuse me, can you tell us where we can find a real octopus?
Asked Dolly.
Hold on to my pincers, and I'll show you the little island where the octopus likes to sunbathe.
The crab helped them to the island and swam away. The octopus was much bigger than they'd imagined, and it frightened them. Berry and Dolly hid behind a big rock. Then the octopus had a good idea. It picked up some pebbles and started to juggle them with its 8 tentacles. The little ladybird and the snail crept out from behind the rock.
Come over here,
The octopus said.
I'll show you the prettiest pebbles on my island.
Berry and Dolly quickly made friends with the octopus, and they all had so much fun.
It's time for us to go, said Dolly. Goodbye. It was very nice to meet you.
Bye-bye,
replied the octopus, and gave them both a shiny pebble each. Berry and Dolly got into the boat and tried to paddle away, but it was too hard.
Oh dear, Berry, we won't be able to manage. We'll have to get out of the boat.
Dolly was really scared.
See, Berry, I told you we shouldn't have sailed so far from home.
I think you're right, Dolly. But then the stone started to move.
Why are you so sad, little snail?
The stone asked. This made Berry laugh. It wasn't a stone after all. It was a turtle.
My friends, the rainbow fish, are about to begin their long journey. They'll swim up the stream all the way to the source. I'm sure they'd be happy to take you with them.
Berry and Dolly said goodbye to the turtle and sat on the back of the captain fish. Then they all set off on their way home. By the time it was getting dark, the fish had reached the clearing where the ladybird's spotty house stood. Berry and Dolly thanked the fish for their help, and they swam away.
See, Dolly, all's well that ends well,
the little snail said wisely.